It's a good AGam in Kansas morning. Good morning. Let's take a look and see what's coming up today. First, K-State's Doug Shoup discusses new alternatives for fighting resistant weeds. Next, Andy Winsor, a farmer near Grantville, updates us on the 2015 research study in which he was involved. Then on Horsing Around, Dr. Chris Blevins and Dr. Dylan Lutter talk about colic and colic surgery. We'll end with Bob Weaber, who tells us about two Beef Sire Selection tools, the Selection Index and DNA markers. Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
I'm Doug Shoup. I'm the Southeast Area Agronomist for Kansas State University, and a lot of our winter programming this winter has been focused on weed control, and really a lot of our effort has been focused on pigweed control. So there are several pigweed species in Kansas, but the ones that producers are having the most difficult problem with are two particular species. One is common water hemp. It's found mostly in the eastern third of Kansas. And then the other one, which has been more of a recent problem, is Palmer amaranth. And that is one that's really exploded in central and western Kansas. And a lot of that is because of the herbicide glyphosate. And glyphosate has been fantastic. And we've got a lot of great benefits from glyphosate. And there's still a lot of good benefits from glyphosate. But these two particular pigweed species have developed resistance to glyphosate, which has caused some newer challenges for producers. And so some of our emphasis in our weed control meetings this winter has been on focusing on the other cultural practices that we can do for good weed management. And one of those that we don't think about a lot of times is the narrower rows. And a lot of times in soybeans is where we have our most difficult problems with pigweed species. And so I've been stressing to producers that doing simple things like narrowing our soybean rows from 30 inches down to 15 inches or even less, we can get a significant suppression of germination, up to about 60% germination suppression just by narrowing our soybean rows. And so doing some of those little things outside of herbicides can go a long way towards taking a lot of pressure off of our herbicides to work. But ultimately, what the take-home message is for producers who are having problems is focus on residual pre-emerge herbicides. And still, I feel like there's about 3 good classes of herbicides that work pre-emerge in soybean. That would be a class 5, which is Syncor or metribuzin, or there's generics of metribuzins. The class 14, which are what we call the PPO herbicides, and those are things that contain sulfentrazone or Valor or fumezephin, which is in prefix. And then the other one is the group 15 class herbicides, which are things like Dual, Outlook, Zidua, and Warrant. And so any sort of combination, 2 or 3 of those different classes of herbicides is what I've been recommending to producers. Just as long as we have 2 mechanisms of action in there, we can get longer active control. We put less selection pressure on the one herbicide that is working for our pre-emerge, and it's just a better integrated weed management approach to help reduce the amount of herbicide resistance that could develop down the road.
Heinen Brothers, a 4th-generation Northeast Kansas farm family, knows how tough farming can be. Farmers helping farmers. Heinen Brothers Ag, selling and servicing crop protection products, fertilizer, anhydrous ammonia, cover crops, quality aerial and ground application. Call today to learn about our extended term financing program, 800-760-4964. HeinenBrothersAg.com.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
Buying a car shouldn't be this hard. And at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego, it isn't. It's actually awesome. Whether you want a new or used car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. Even if you want to custom order a new car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. See Toby's team at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego. We're awesome. Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
ValleyVet.com, ValleyVet.com, Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
I'm Andy Winsor. We farm near Grantville, Kansas, just east of Topeka, and we farm in the Kansas River Valley and in the hills to the north. This past year in 2015, participated in a research study that K-State Research conducted that was funded through the United Soybean Board. In this study, we compared 15-inch row soybeans and 30-inch row soybeans. Seed rate was kept constant at 160,000 seeds per acre. And that's a multi-state study where they've done in several states. This year it was really wet when we planted, and then it rained right afterward. We had a better stand in the 15-inch rows than we did the 30s. Canopy closure and spacing the seeds out within the row a little bit more helps the plants compete for nutrients and sunlight, as well as just getting the canopy closed earlier. What we saw for results is the 15-inch rows out-yielded the 30-inch rows by 3 to 5 bushels, which is what all the other research is showing on that comparison also.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
AGam in Kansas, brought to you in part by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Hello and welcome to Horsing Around. I'm Dr. Chris Blevins at Kansas State University Veterinary Health Center. Today, joined by Dr. Dylan Lutter. He is a board-certified surgeon here in large animal at Kansas State and assistant professor, and does a lot of the emergency work here at the vet school. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I think that something that's always important to go through that a lot of horse owners, they're very leery about is colic surgery, or if a horse would need to go to colic surgery, some maybe misperceptions of that, or just being comfortable with that situation and potential options for that. So could you go through kind of if an owner or even that referring veterinarian is getting ready to potentially refer maybe to you at night or even during the day, when is the best time to try to figure out when surgery may be a needed option?
Sure, Chris. That's a very common question we get, and a lot of people have a perception that the colic is really bad. It may not be worth going to surgery, and I think the most important thing to keep in mind is the sooner that we can get the horse here, the better. Once it sort of becomes evident that this is not just a routine run-of-the-mill colic that one vet visit isn't going to take care of.
And with that, and as you move forward, what are some different like colics that happen? And you don't have to go through the whole gamut, maybe just a few of the more common ones that are on the surgery table that you've been dealing with here at Kansas State.
Sure. Well, certainly the most common one that we see here are large colon impactions or displacements. So basically the feed material in the colon becomes really dry and it just gets stuck in there, or the colon moves to the wrong spot. That's one of the most common that we see here. And then the other aspect would be a large colon or a small colon twist, where something twists and cuts off the blood supply, and then we may need to go in and take that part out. So.
And I think that's something where, too, some owners think, well, if you take out part of the bowel, that horse isn't going to do well. What's the aspect when you have that conversation? Maybe there's devitalized small intestine or large intestine. What is that kind of communication with the owner dependent on, I guess?
Sure, it is situation dependent, but you know, a lot of times we look at how sick the horse is before going to surgery and try to get an estimate of what sort of complications might occur, because that can really affect how the horse does after surgery. But if the horse is relatively stable and we're able to take the devitalized piece out, actually around 70 to 75% of horses, depending on the procedure we do, sometimes it's less than that, can actually go back to doing what they're doing and go back to being normal horses. So it is definitely a worthwhile procedure.
I think that's stuff that owners need to remember is just because they're going to go to surgery doesn't mean they're going to have a life-changing situation where they can't go back to. It all depends on the colic, obviously, but success rate can be fairly good, and it's definitely better than just a 50-50 chance.
Oh, definitely. Well, and especially for the displacements and impactions that I mentioned, that can be up greater than 90% chance. So it's worth having that in mind.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Lutter, and giving us the information on colics and colic surgeries. And I guess if people have a horse that's needing colic surgery, you know, you'd be talking to one of the surgeons here at the vet school, maybe even Dr. Lutter. But it's one of those things where we're here if you ever need us.
That's right, we're here. Feel free to give us a call.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Lutter.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Chris Blevins for Horsing Around, and we'll see you around.
I'm a patient of Kansas Regenerative Medicine in Manhattan. I had stem cell therapy in my hips and my left knee. My wife and I both are patients. We went down there the same day in November. Since then, my hips are feeling a lot better. I can work now most of the day if I want to. And before, if I worked in the morning, I was done in the afternoon, or if I worked in the afternoon, I was sure enough done for the rest of the day.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
This segment brought to you by Heinen Brothers Ag, farmers helping farmers by offering quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia. Call today to protect your crop yield.
So one of the things that we've been talking at the Winter Ranch Management Series this year is giving producers a bit of an update on some of the new Beef Sire Selection tools that are available. And we use new a little bit loosely, but two of the concepts that I've been talking about this year are selection index, so a method of weighting individual animal EPDs by economic weights towards a specific endpoint as a tool for producers to use a single value then as the result of that mathematics, and using that single value in their selection decisions. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. The other concept that we've been working on this year is arguably a maybe more recent addition to our suite of tools, and that's the use of genomics and using DNA markers as a way to gather information about an individual animal's genetic potential for a variety of traits, and then incorporating that into the EPD system that produces genetic evaluations for animals from a number of breeds here in the U.S. So kind of back to the selection index concept, one of the things that's really important for producers to recognize is that for their specific operation, there are a set of economically relevant traits. And those economically relevant traits are ones that either have a direct cost associated with them in their production system or a revenue stream associated with them. So a common one to think about is if you sell calves at weaning time, weaning weight is an economically relevant trait. And it's one of the traits that we have available for measuring or reporting genetic potential for growth in our production system. Other measurements for growth rate include yearling weight or post-weaning gain, average daily gain, carcass weight. We can think about mature weight, any of those other measurements of growth. And they happen to be what we call indicator traits because they, in that particular production scenario where we sell calves at weaning time, don't have a direct revenue associated with them. Weaning weight does. The other ones are indicator traits and they're genetically associated with weaning weight. So what we do then is in the selection index is we put economic weights on traits like weaning weight when we have that endpoint, and other traits that are related to production costs, say calving ease, birth weight, maybe milk EPD of the cow, those sort of things that have a consequence in terms of the profit equation relative to the weaning endpoint. So one of these measurements is $W that's produced by American Angus, a number of other breeds, Simmental, Gelbvieh, Limousin, Charolais, Hereford all have selection indexes as well. And almost all of them are targeted towards some specific set of endpoints. So if you sell calves at weaning time, there's a weaning selection index. Many breeds also have what's called an all-purpose index or something that's related to that that says, okay, we're going to have a production system where we retain ownership of calves, put them through the feed yard, so there's emphasis on carcass traits as ERTs, but also keep replacement heifers, so there's economic weighting on the maternal traits as well. The nice things about all of these selection indexes is they provide a single value to use in the selection criteria of bulls, so instead of opening the sale catalog and trying to sort through 15 or 16 different EPDs, you can go to a single selection index that summarizes and appropriately weights each of those individual traits as they contribute to profitability for that particular endpoint. So one of the key things that I hope producers take away from our talks this year is that it's really important then, since the index is so driven by marketing endpoint, that you actually pick the right index to use in selection. A common mistake is for producers to use one of the terminal indexes that only weights growth and carcass merit of animals, so we're making the assumption all steers and heifers are going to slaughter. And they use that selection index in a system that is not a terminal system. So they actually keep replacement heifers back or they sell calves at a weaning endpoint. So you have a disconnect between the traits that are in the selection index and the ones that are actually important in the selection scenario. And that creates a lot of problems in the selection system, and you decrease efficiency pretty dramatically. And it's easy to see if you don't put any economic weight on maternal traits because you used a terminal index and you actually keep replacement heifers, that you've actually selected replacement heifers that potentially aren't very good replacements because you haven't put any weight on the maternal traits. So a pretty kind of common sense approach that we try and advocate is that producers make sure that they align the selection index that they're using with their particular scenario and marketing endpoint. So it provides a really nice way to do that. One of the great things is that the scale that animals are measured on is in dollars difference per progeny in terms of profit expectation. So it's in dollar units, and that's an easy thing for all of us to understand and translate. So it's a really convenient tool. One of the other things that we hope producers do is that if you're going to use selection index, that you actually use it pretty much exclusively as your selection criteria. If you have a weaning endpoint, you use $W and also put selection pressure on weaning weight, now you've messed up your index because you've double counted weaning weight in your selection criteria. So try and withhold using other tools or EPDs in the selection when using selection index. One notable exception might be if you were using a particular sire to mate yearling heifers for their first calf. We might put some kind of criteria on say calving ease EPD as a way to make sure that we have adequate levels of calving ease performance to minimize dystocia. And the way you would do that is sort them up on the index that you're using, and then go find the first bull in that list that meets your threshold criteria for calving ease. Then you've sort of done the maximal job of selecting for adequate calving ease and economic weighting for the traits of your marketing endpoint and interest. So selection index is a really useful tool. It's been around for a long time in pork and poultry businesses, primarily since the 1940s and 50s, but not adopted in the beef sector until the early 2000s. So we've had a big gap in time to really prove out the technology in other species, and it's becoming pretty widely adopted as a tool for commercial producers now in the beef sector. And after the break, we'll talk some more about beef genomics and the use of genomics tools in beef sire selection.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, SureCrop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. SureCrop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose SureCrop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
AGam in Kansas is brought to you in part by SureCrop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
So that was one of the areas that we talked about, selection index. The other one was the use of genomics. And DNA technology has moved pretty rapidly over the last couple of years. And to the extent that many producers, seed stock producers that is, are using genomics technology to add accuracy to the EPDs of the bulls and heifers that they're producing. And this is important because if we think about the bulls that most commercial producers buy and use are yearling bulls. They're unproven. They have maybe their own performance record, but certainly no calf records in the genetic evaluation, so their EPDs have low accuracy. Adding accuracy then decreases the risk of making a bad decision because we've improved the reliability of those predictions, and in some cases pretty dramatically. Current tools from, say, Limousin, Angus, Hereford, Simmental produce enough accuracy across the whole suite of traits to be equal to basically that bull's first calf crop measured through its complete production life. That has pretty substantial value if we think about, well, we get carcass information or information on carcass traits equivalent to taking a yearling bull's calves clear to slaughter. Well, that's a time period that's at least 2 or 3 years in the future if we were to try and do that from a performance record standpoint. If we think about cow longevity or stayability as a trait, one that's very important to us as commercial beef producers, a bull's doesn't have his first daughter's production records to 6 years of age until he's 8 or 9 years old. And by the time he's a proven sire for stayability, he's long dead and his daughters are all 8 or 9 years old. So a really important trait, one that's very difficult to measure, but the genomics tools give us a shortcut in time. So we get as much accuracy as that bull's first set of daughters going clear through their productive lives and providing information to that genetic evaluation system. So the genomics tools are really good for adding accuracy to our genetic predictions. They'll continue to get better, but one thing producers should be aware of is that as you go out and seek bulls that you're going to use either to produce replacements or calves that are going on to slaughter, seeking out those that have added accuracy means decreased genetic risk to you as a producer and added value. So it's a thing that many producers are going after and seeking out in the marketplace. And one thing that's important to recognize is that the way you consume that tool is just like you use EPDs and selection index. The breed associations incorporate that data directly into the genetic evaluation system, so you don't get 2 separate numbers for weaning weight. You get one genomically enhanced value for weaning weight, and of course all those genomically enhanced values then feed into the selection indexes. So we encourage producers to kind of develop awareness and knowledge about genomics tools, but by and large from a selection standpoint, if you already know how to use EPDs, you automatically now know how to use genomically enhanced DPDs, and that's one of the really convenient tools of the recent developments. So more information from our Winter Ranch Management Series and more broadly our beef extension program here at K-State can be found at ksubeef.org, and that's O-R-G, or for some genetic specific information, if you go to ebeef.org, so ebeef.org has a bunch of materials recently developed by several colleagues and I in the area of beef genetics and genomics.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.